my son got unemployment, he got stimulus, and he got something else. And I'm thinking, these kids get everything. Yes, sir. You ready, Kim? Okay, we'll call to order our special meeting, Friday, April 3rd. Bruce, and for the public, we are social distancing, so we only have 10 in the room. We will rotate out as needed, and we've spaced out our council members. And you can live stream this. I hope you're doing that. And Bruce, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just some updates. As you know, this thing's changing daily. Some of the information I've given you already has changed since it was laid up there. Quickly, we just listened to a press conference from the governor, and there are over 2,000 cases in North Carolina now, and 19 deaths, and 42 cases in New Hanover County that have been reported. Give you that background, and then what I'm going to do is just run through a few things we've done at staff level here at Town Hall. Sort of explain the state of emergencies. There's been a lot of questions about that, what the different ones between the state, the county, and the towns. And then I'll run through some of the questions that were submitted to you guys that we will go through. First, I'd like to thank our staff, our first responders who are out here being exposed to this. Our public utility and public works guys are out there, and a lot of exposure, and we thank them for their work. And then our staff here, especially the front line and utility billing, have really stepped up. The phones have been ringing off the hook because people can't come in, so they've had to do a lot of work there. At Town Hall, we are, under a telecommuting policy. A lot of our staff is working from home, and that's working out really well. We've had some virtual staff meetings that turned out really efficient, actually. So we get a lot done. But them not being here has put a burden on the people answering the phone. So we're asking people, if you can, to please email us questions and answers if possible. We'll still be answering the phones when we can, but there's limited people here to answer the phones, so we'll try to get back to you as soon as we can if we can't get to the phone call. And we urge the public, if they see one of our workers, first responders or utility or public works guys, please keep your distance, make them feel comfortable, and be safe for yourself. As everyone knows, the governor ordered a state of emergency on March 10th. It's pretty much a blanket state of emergency, just getting it there. We followed suit, along with New Hanover County, on March 20th. And with that state of emergency, we closed Freeman Park, the public beach accesses, and public parking. Then just, I guess, a little over a week ago, the governor ordered, it started this Monday, a stay-at-home order. We followed suit on March 28th with the county. Ours added a little more to it. His allowed for non-essential businesses and things to continue to operate, and we'll go over what's essential and what's non-essential in his order and what we've done differently. The county's order is more restrictive, and ours are too. Like we ordered short-term rentals on the later in the month. We ordered short-term rentals before the county did, and there's different restrictions. As long as ours are more restrictive, we go by the governor's, but we can add more restrictions, and that's what we've done. The county's restriction not only added short-term rentals restrictions like we did, they also added closing playgrounds, team facilities, and public gardens. We have followed suit. Our parks are closed right now. Our Mike Chapel Park is closed. The basketball court, skateboard park is all closed. It closes all places of amusement. Closes all non-essential retail. That's a little more further than the governor went. It closes auto sales. That's another one further. Hotels, motels, and short-term rentals, similar to what we've done. And it closes inside carry-out food services, right? Before you could order and go in and pick your food, now you got to go to the door and they bring it out to you. And the goal and purpose of all these, of course, is to prevent exposure and limit the spread of the coronavirus. So that's what the state of emergency. Some of the questions we've gotten, and I know council has received a lot of them, and you guys sent us some that you were receiving. And I've just sort of broken them into groups here, but I've got about 17, and I'll go through each one just so the public can hear what we've done and what the answers are. The biggest questions are about the beach. If I have a beach private access, can I use the beach if I follow social distancing guidelines? our state of emergency order, and it seems the county's also closed all public beach accesses and parking lots. The beach strand is public trust land governed by the state of North Carolina, and it's not clear to us if we have the legal authority to force people off the beach. We will enforce the closed public accesses, and require proper social distancing and the gatherings of no more than 10 people. And I'll go into what we can do enforcement-wise here in a little bit, but we will be enforcing that. And then the more questions on, they like to walk and surf and fish. Like I said, we're not clear. We're still getting clarification. Our legal advice is it's public trust land governed by the state that we don't have the authority to enforce at this time. That may change.
So let's elaborate on that before you go any further, before somebody misunderstands. You cannot access the beach unless you have a private beach access.
That's correct. Yeah, if you have a private access, we don't think we have the authority to stop you from doing that right now. That may change. There's some different interpretations of that, but that's our understanding.
And we're asking the county for some interpretation on that.
That's correct.
At this time. Okay, but we are encouraging everyone just not to do it.
Yeah, just stay away. And the biggest thing is still social distancing and not gathering in groups. And there's more questions on that. And then, like I said, several questions on the beach. One question was, can we open the beach to residents? The governor's order said we could use public spaces to exercise. As mentioned earlier, it's public trust land. We cannot, as a town, discriminate between residents and non-residents who gets use of the beach. But it is private access right now is what we're saying. So we can't discriminate and just leave it one way or the other. Question, can we close the bridge and open the beaches back up for locals? There's several things to consider when closing the bridge, and I know council's discussed it. And there's some good things that could restrict some movement in town, but there's also things to consider. One of them is that the police officers take them off the streets, manning the bridge, and then they would increase their exposure as citizens coming in, checking to see where they're going, because now construction and everything else is still allowed to go back and forth. So
And is Chief going to talk about that?
yeah, he'll
Okay,
bring
in
up
more detail when he
information.
comes up.
Right,
Okay.
and he's got plans ready to go if we get to the point to closing. This is one that just changed tonight. Our boat ramp's still open. According to an order from the county, they've added, and of course we were consenting with their state of emergency orders, that all public and private boat ramps are closed and marinas. So that's something new.
As of
Tonight
tonight,
at 7:30.
which is the same for Masonboro Island.
Yes, and we're still trying to.
And that came directly from the county.
That's correct. And we're trying to get more clarification on that because we just received that right before coming in here. And there's a question, can I take my boat out? We're still getting clarification, but I would assume if you have a private boat slip, you can use your boat. And this does not apply to non-motorized boats. I did read that. There's kayaks and paddle boards that you can still use boat ramps and launches. Question we've had a lot of, and we acted early on this, but I'm having trouble paying my water bills online. What can I do? Will I be disconnected? First of all, you won't be disconnected. We started that, and the governor added to it and said you can't disconnect someone from public utility, and you can't charge them penalties and late fees and interest. So we are following those orders. If you're having trouble paying online, call us. We will walk you through it, but we were not going to disconnect you. Question about, are we checking on people that are living in Airbnbs? We are notifying short-term rentals of the restrictions that are in place. We've got 21 complaints so far since Friday, or since Monday, I guess. But no, we started that early, so we've been getting those. We have notified those 21 people.
How many, I'm sorry?
21.
21.
If this first letter is letting them know the rules and regulations and letting them know that they are subject to criminal penalties if they don't follow
And is our
suit.
police department following up on that?
They will be, if the first letter doesn't work and we get a second complaint, we'll be turning it over to the police department to investigate.
And do you find most people are complying if they realize they're there and they shouldn't be? Are they leaving?
Yeah, we haven't had any return complaints yet. I do know all the local rental agencies and property management companies are complying, and the hotels, everyone else is complying. I think Airbnb and VRBO and some of the other ones have not updated their sites. We have notified them of our rules and regulations. I believe the county's notified them of the same things, but we still see when you go online that some of them are showing they're vacant and can be rented. So
And can you talk about, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. On the website, you have a place for people to report an address that they think is in violation?
Yes, it's on the police site, and we've linked it to the town site also. If you observe what you think is somebody violating the short-term rental restrictions, you can fill it out. It'll go to us. We will notify that property owner, and if it continues, we get another complaint, we will have the police
And that's a
That's the-
criminal charge.
Yes, it's Class 2 misdemeanor. Any violation of a state of emergency order is a Class 2 misdemeanor.
Okay.
Include,
I'm not sure if the public knows about the second notice. I can see them filling out the first notice, but I don't see them filling out the second notice unless they actually know that we have that in place.
well, I think.
Does that make
we-
sense?
Yeah, but if they, we'll follow through, but we will double check too, because if we send the notice and we still see people there, we can investigate further.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if we send out a notice to someone, I mean, we should follow back 2-3 days later, just do a drive-by,
Right,
just
yeah.
to make sure.
And we can do that. I'll get with Chief, make sure we have a policy how we follow up, because there will be cases that somebody thinks somebody's standing there that actually owns it,
Right.
or something. We don't want to harass anyone who's not around, and we can't force people to leave. We can only criminally charge the property owner.
And while you're on that topic, I don't know if that's farther down, I did get some people say, my neighbors own the house next door to me, they live in Raleigh, they're here on the weekends. That's private property. If they own the property, we have no
That's
control
correct.
over it.
We can't restrict that, and we can't, there's lots of things, it's going to be a tough policy to enforce, but we're going to do our best to make sure. And I think we've seen a significant, less number of people in town because of that, and with the hotels and the property managed properties there.
And for the public, the reason for that is there's no travel ban in North Carolina, so people are allowed to travel.
That's right. There is the stay-at-home
Stay at
order by the governor that hopefully everyone will do. We've gotten some emails today, people wanting to come down, and we suggest no, stay in Vermont or whatever place they were asking to come from, 'cause where they had the same orders there. So, yeah, that is in place, and we will talk about enforcement. I'll go ahead and right now. We said any violation of the state of emergency order is can be a Class 2 misdemeanor, and we will, like crossing the public beach accesses, our officers are patrolling that, and we'll cite if necessary someone doing that. And same with crossing dunes and everything else. They're out there watching that, and they're not, like I said, not removing people from the beach right now, but they are watching to see people
And
cross.
just for the public, because I do hear a lot about the dunes, the fine for being in the dunes is $1,000? It's very expensive,
Yeah.
and it's not worth walking over those dunes,
And
so.
people doing, they realize the neighbors and the citizens are watching too, and they're going to be calling us when they see it, so just please don't do that. Question we had, will I be pulled and ticketed by an officer while driving through town? Do I need some kind of identification that I'm going to work? How are we going to enforce the governor's orders? Right now, and Chief Spivey can address this more, that I don't think we're going to pull people and show us your papers. We are going to assume you're going to one of the essential services or handling business or going to work. So unless there's more orders from the governor or things, we have some issues where it gets out of control, we're not doing that. Question, we're going to have a curfew. This is something Chief Spivey can also address further. Right now, we don't have one in place, but if at such time, we can add that to the state of emergency declarations. And about checkpoints, and we're not going to have.
Did
we're
you
not
skip
gonna-
number 10 on purpose?
Did I miss it? Oh, no, sorry. Yeah, there's a question why people from the Winters RV Park and Coles Motel and et cetera are allowed to stay after the short-term rental ban. We felt a lot of these people were not, this was their resident or this was their second home, especially the RV park, and they weren't true short-term rentals. Some of them may rent week to week, but that's their place of residency, so we're not enforcing the short.
So that is falling under the extended stay, the 28 days
28 days,
extended
yeah.
stay.
Yeah, it's sort of the same thing, yeah. I think it would fall into that, but we just looked at them as either residents or second home people. We have told somebody asking if they could bring their camper down and rent a space. We said, no, that would fall under it, but the ones that are there, they're there all the time, so we're not.
Have we talked to Coles Russo and to Troy Winter just to share with them that weekly renters, we're okay with that. A lot of those
Right.
people are,
Yeah.
they're weekly, but
Right.
they've been there for 3 years.
Right.
But our preference would be not to just throw open the door and start doing a bunch of new just
Yeah.
because we're trying to be cooperative with them.
I have not talked to them
Reach
personally,
out
but
to
I'll
them.
make sure that we have a discussion.
So
with
I think that's a great idea to reach out to them and hope that they, especially particularly Troy with the RV park, where he's at with that. And
He's got, most of those people have been there for more than
Yeah.
30 or 60 days, as they have been on the weekly rentals. So I think, we should be making sure that the people that are on the weekly rentals in those two particular sites, and I'm sure Chief Spivey knows those folks over there, could talk to them, or you could.
Okay, yeah. We'll reach out to them. Okay. And then the other one was, is construction an essential business? It brings non-residents into our neighborhood. And at this time, construction is considered an essential business under the governor's and county's declarations. And while we're there, I'll just quickly go what's considered essential and not. I grouped them. There's actually, the governor's order listed 30 different things that are considered essential, and within each one of them was, 5 to 15 or 20 more that fell under each one of those. But the big one we're getting, of course, it makes sense, healthcare, emergency services, government operations, food and beverage. Things like that are pretty clear why these things are essential services. Construction, we've getting a lot of questions why. I'm not sure, but the governor's order does say essential infrastructure operations included but not limited to, and it goes into food and beverage, et cetera. Construction including but not limited to construction required in response to this public health emergency. So it says that's fine, but also that's not what it's limited to. And then critical trades, is the term. Yeah, critical trades, building construction, tradesmen and tradeswomen and other trades included but not limited to plumbers, electricians, exterminators, et cetera, are essential services. So we are getting that, and construction workers and related businesses are considered essential. And I can ask questions. The governor's, like I said, goes on 30 with lots of different things are. The county did adopt something above and beyond when it came to non-essential retail. They've closed shopping malls and non-essential retail where the governor's wasn't as tough. So the one we consider with the county does close more. Question is, can I sit with my neighbors in their driveway? The governor's order allows you to do welfare checks on friends and family, but not for social visits. That said, I don't think the police is going to break up neighbors out in their yard talking, as long as they're social distancing, and as long as there's not 10 or more. But technically you can, but I don't think that's what they're looking at. They're looking at the violations of the intent of what was passed or what was declared. And then the last thing I had was, where's the best place to get updates from the town related to this virus? And if you go to our website, and I don't have it up here, but carolinabeach.org, we've got links to state, federal, all kinds of links that are updated every day. So we're trying to keep it updated, and there's all kinds of information you can get there. And of course, you can call or email town hall. And not sure if there's anything else. Any questions?
I do have one question.
Sure.
So, when we get updates on coronavirus, we always get them at a national level, we get them at a state level, and we get them at a county level. Is it possible to get it for cities and towns?
I think Chief Griffin will address this when he gets up here, but we don't have access. They don't even know when they're going to call. If they're just assuming everyone is, I guess, but we don't have any idea. It's not even tracked. We've asked if we could get that information, and it's not shared with us. And I think there's some privacy concerns and everything else, but we've asked for in the zip code. Yeah,
Right, they wouldn't give you a 284.
yeah, we
And we ask Chief Griffin to address that when he comes up, and he'll kind of go through that,
All right, thank you.
why that is.
The governor did mention today about some, encouraging things that could be done. He was encouraging, and some are doing it here, restricting how many people go in stores, and that's things some cities and towns have done, where half the occupancy or 125 people max, or things if we continue to have issues, which from what I hear, our businesses are trying to limit how many people in, so I don't think it's an issue. I've heard the hardware store and the grocery stores are trying to space people and do things, but there's options we can always look at in the future, but it's not.
No, other than the things we talked about earlier, if you could be prepared to talk at our next meeting about some kind of minimum or no minimum utility bill for closed businesses, where we're at on the parking meters as far as enforcing or not enforcing collection of parking fees.
We'll come back with some options or solutions to all that. Thank you. Mayor, he's wanting to know if he could ask a question.
Well, we're not having public comment, Fred, but if you'd like to come up, go ahead. You'd have to come to the microphone.
So, you said, I just want to know where you can go to express my constitutional right to think this is an abomination, what this country is doing.
I would,
Where can I go to express my total just almost to the point of this, I just think this country is,
I would say you need to go to the governor.
pardon me?
I would say you need to go express it to the governor of
Well,
North Carolina.
Can't you say that to the elected officials here? Can't we say that?
I think you just did.
Yeah, I did, but where is it that the governor gets the authority to abdicate my rights?
Well, and I understand, how you feel, and that would certainly be a question for him, and I am not privy to constitutional law. We are following our state of emergency, and we're following the governor and the county's lead on this. And we're trying to, our number one concern is public health and safety. And we're following the CDC and the health department with all these rules and regulations that we're making. I mean, I understand that you feel violated. I mean, I would certainly suggest that would be the place for you to go. I don't think we're, well, since you're up next, Chief, I'll let you address that.
Mayor, council, thank you. I watched the governor's last update, which was just a couple hours ago, and I got some optimism from it, but I also watched that it looked like he and his staff were underwhelmed with what Fred was talking about with the stay-at-home order. Fred, I think you've got a medical background. And I've spent 10 years in the medical background, and I think people that are attuned to that understand that there's infection, and that the best way we can combat that is with what the order said, to do some distancing and stay in place. I think we've also had a lesson from some of our other world partners, just looking at the news. So I certainly don't want to see that happen here. There's been the question about closing the bridge. As we said before, we can close the bridge. We have the capability. We've done it a number of times before. Maintaining the closure is where we would have some struggles, although I think we could do it. And there may be some legalities to it. Whenever we close the bridge, it's been for certain issues where maybe the roads were torn up or flooded or power lines down or trees over roads with no visibility. So it was a health issue. This is too. So I think we'd have to partner and get some legal advice from our legal staff to see how that would translate over to Department of Transportation. We know that we just can't arbitrarily change the speed limits or put up stoplights or put up crosswalks on Ocean, 421, or Dow Road because they're state-owned. Same case with the bridge. We had a question about the short-term rentals. So what I would say to those that own rental property is that there is a population of staff that's working from home who have the time and energy to spend looking on Airbnb and looking at addresses and doing some internet research to find out how you're operating and if you're doing short-term rentals or not. I think the notice that's sent to them in the mail saying, here's the ordinance, here's the law, here's the possible ramifications, which will be a Class 2 misdemeanor, is great. It's a great start. I hope we find a lot of compliance with that. But certainly law enforcement is able to step in if we find that the compliance isn't there, or they're just obstinate to it and are not paying attention to it and following it. As far as our call volume has been a little bit down, which is good for regular crimes. We don't see anything necessarily unusual. There have been a few person crimes, domestics, things like that, disturbances, civil disturbances. As far as a family unit, that's to be expected. We kind of anticipated that. We've had a lot of compliance with not crossing the town-owned beach accesses. There have been some. We've done a lot of education, a lot of warnings, but there are some people that do have court dates, because that is also a Class 2 misdemeanor.
So can you address how many tickets you've written?
If I'm not mistaken, it's 3 or 4 at this point, which I consider not to be a lot, but I think there's a lot of compliance. I would just urge people to stay home. That's what the order is. It makes sense. I think it's the best defense we have now. I'd be glad to answer any questions any council members may have.
I actually have a couple.
Go ahead.
So I was talking to a resident the other day, and we were talking about the bridge closure, needless to say, and he came up with a suggestion that we want to deter people from coming to Carolina Beach that don't live here. And he suggested making the bridge come down to one lane and then parking a cop car there with the lights on. It doesn't have to be manned. It's a deterrent. It gives people an option to make a U-turn at the end of the bridge at River Road or to come up with the bridge. Maybe we man it an hour a day or 2 hours a day, and we stay 10 feet away from the car. Just as a physical presence, just to deter people from coming to the town. I thought I might throw that out there. It's just an idea.
I think it would be mostly bark with no bite. We've managed bridge closure for days at a time.
Right.
And we could do that. It's the long term. But I think it would be likened that some people are going to cross public beach accesses because they want to walk on the beach, they want to go surfing, they want to go swimming, or just have some time on the sand. I think you might have the same experience with a quasi bridge closure that's not actually a bona fide bridge closure. I think that's an all or none. Sort of like the curfew. Curfew is all or none. It can't really be something that's halfway there. It's
But
just
if
a
you're
preference.
driving into town and you see the lane going down to one lane, it's going to make you think before you drive over that bridge.
It could. It may make you take pause for consideration.
Right. Even if it takes care of a couple people, it's a win. For me, it is.
Our citizens are helping us do that. That was a great point about how do you know if the short-term rentals have ceased and stopped and desisted. Our residents are going to let us know.
Right.
I think that's an important message for short-term rental owners, property owners, is that the form that they're filling out online is from people that live there full-time, and they know what vehicles or what cars or what some of the owners may look like and how they operate there.
Right.
So,
And the second thing I had was, getting back to what Fred said a little bit, is my concern is 2 or 3 weeks from now, when people aren't getting their paychecks, what's going to happen with the crime in this town, if anything happens. But people are going to be sensitive. They're going to be extremely sensitive.
They will be, but again, I have to be an optimist. And I can tell you that when we've had some hurricanes, there's been people without electricity for days, without medicine, without food. And our people have reached out to other neighbors and helped them out along the way. I don't see this as a community where it's every person for themselves. I don't think it ever has been. And we're blessed by that.
Agreed.
But if we should have some sort of civil unrest, we're prepared for it. We're going to do our job, and we'll call in reserves if we need to.
It's just an unknown.
It is an
We've
unknown.
never gone through this.
I think we're fortunate that we haven't seen that in other places. I think the one place I don't want to be is where we look back, like a lot of other communities, not only in the United States, but around the world, and say, well, why didn't we do this 2 or 3 weeks ago? Every time something happens, we always look back and say, why don't we do that 2 or 3 weeks ago? And we have some lessons that have already been out there globally that we can learn from. And so far, for something that is new, evolving, with diminished staff that we've never done before, and there's never been laws and procedures created on it,
Right.
we're doing a fantastic job.
Yeah. Talking about that, I do want to give you kudos for you and the fire department for the parade for the teachers. That is perfect for this community.
It was
I
fun.
would
It
love
was
to
our
see more of that. Yeah, it was awesome. Thank you.
So Chief, while we're on that topic, would you mind addressing, because a lot of people are new here, they don't know, we all have quite a bit of experience with a bridge closure. Could you talk about what's involved in that so they would understand?
It would take participation from Curie Beach. They also populate the island. our municipality south to it, so it would take them, I'm sure their elected officials, coordination, also with their police officers. It would take operations, probably from both municipalities, to set up the block, and then we develop a battle rhythm of how often we would change out officers, shifts, scheduling, and then we would call in state and local partners to assist with that.
So in the past, we've had some issues with people not having their stickers. It would be a backup coming onto the island. I mean, I remember when it was backed up to Masonboro Commons, trying to get onto the island.
It would at least be backed up to that, you're absolutely right. And then it's just like the property owners. Some of these property owners live in other states. They may not necessarily know our ordinance. That's why we're sending out the letters. You would have people that be coming here visiting or that having property here that may not have the correct credentials. There's a whole laundry list of reasons why you would be backed up on a line. I think you would expect to be,
I don't know that the backup would be that great, honestly. If you think about it, when we close the bridge for a hurricane, it's because we've done an evacuation and everyone's left, and they're all waiting to get back on. In this particular case, we're saying, well, I believe the intent had been, and I understand we're not talking about it at this point, nor does it likely it's going to happen in the near future, but it would be to prevent people that have no business on the island from being on the island. In other words, if you're not a resident, a business owner, or a property owner, or an employee. So I think the compassion that some people reached out to me and said, hey, look, I live at the Cape. I get my medicine from the CVS. That's where they phone in. That's a pretty significant issue to tonight. So I'm just saying, but I don't think we're going to have thousands of people like we did at the last hurricane, because not everyone's going to leave the island, right?
I don't
So,
think we'll
we
necessarily
won't
have
have those kind of
thousands of people,
backups. It
but-
would be a logistical problem. I don't
It would
disagree with
be.
that.
And that's why I wanted our public to understand what's actually involved in a bridge closure. I mean, and you're talking about you have 5 officers on a shift, and you're talking about putting 2.
well, we've gone to an abbreviated shift because we have to have a reserve of officers that are located away from the work environment to stay healthy, because we anticipate the likelihood that somebody in a town employee is going to get sick, maybe one of our officers, maybe a fireman, and they're doing the same thing. So we have to have people in reserve that we can break the glass, pull them out to backfill to keep the continuity of the police department going. I think the dynamics are a little different. For a storm, you have people that are literally trapped out of town that can't get back because of the flooding, because they've evacuated. The dynamics are just completely different, never been done before, and there's just a lot of unknowns.
And you're also exposing that officer to everyone who comes over when they check their ID or check their information.
That's an important point.
For me, I think that closing the short-term rentals handled at least 80% of that. And I don't think, as I shared with some of my council members, I don't think there's a perfect answer for any of it. There's not 100% on any of it. We're doing the best we can. I think, with the closure of the short-term rentals, we've seen a great reduction in the number of new people showing up in town that don't live here full-time or don't own property here. And that's really what we were looking to try and manage.
Just to add one note to the town manager, the wildlife boat ramp is closed here. If for anybody who's listening to us online, if you want to keep up to date, they are extremely quick to post opening and closures. So the Annie Boat Drive, the Snows Cut Wildlife Boat Ramp is closed, and I think it's tentatively set to open on April 13th. Check the website. But if you check those the North Carolina Wildlife website, you'll be able to see current opening and closing of boat ramps.
Thank you, Chief. Good work.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Alan. And Alan, are you going to talk about also some of the precautions that our police and fire are doing for
Yes.
your staff? Okay.
Yes. So we started yesterday actually doing temperature checks for fire and police. So we do it twice a day at both shift changes. And that's to ensure that you can be systematic, have symptoms, and then show up to work and not feeling bad, but starting to show temperature rising or things going on. So we decided for the protection of all of our staff and the protection of the community, was to make sure our staff coming in has had their temperature checked to get ahead of that curve. starting tomorrow, we're going to split back off, and police is going to check theirs, and we're going to check ours. We did it the first couple of days, trying to get more equipment in and some trial runs with it. So it's working very well, and I think it's helping the guys with some comfort levels. Our PPE right now is okay, given the fact that it's hard to get our hands on. We, working with the county, we're getting most of our resources filled that we're asking for. So we are looking at how we can decon equipment, and we're in the process of trying to work through the reuse of some of the PPE. Some is disposable, some is reusable, but we got to have a way to decon it. So we were on conference calls today, and think we have a good grip on that. And first of the week, we'll be rolling out the decon, and that'll help with the shortage of N95s and things like that.
Okay. And we wanted you to address the question that we're getting asked a lot. Are there any cases of COVID-19 on Pleasure Island? Would you address that?
Yeah, and I heard Bruce address that pretty well. There is HIPAA laws that does protect the patient and their right to keep their medical status private. So unfortunately, for responders, we don't have that knowledge either. If we did have the knowledge, I still couldn't publicly release it. But we're not privy to that either. We treat all our calls equally, and the guys protect themselves as best we can. We go in with the PPE given. So we are working diligently, and that's been a concern. I've seen other states. I've seen our state. There's emails flying about how we could work with that better. But at the end of the day, the patient does have a right to their medical records being private.
So when a case is reported in the county, nobody knows where it's at in the county, or?
Just the health department personnel. It's a right to know type thing. And from our standpoint, like we said, the patient does have the right to tell us when we respond, but they have to give us that data. We wouldn't technically have that data at our
And
fingertips.
Chief, I don't think we were looking specifically for an address or a person. I think we were trying to understand if they could give us some zip code information. If there's 42 cases in the county, are, any of them in the 28428 zip code?
To my knowledge, there's no region, area, zip code, anything being
Breakout.
released. It's just, it's county, at a county level.
Okay. And that was just one of our frequently asked questions.
Yeah.
Multiple times.
Chief, how about in the fire station? I know Chief Spivey talked about how they were rotating within the fire station itself. I assume there's measures there as well to keep those guys as spaced as you possibly can.
Right, so what we do is, we've obviously discontinued any training. We've discouraged the volunteers and those from just coming around the station, come in when there's calls, and then we're leaving basically. What we're trying to do is, like for calls, the crews are splitting up on calls. That's like fire calls, we have to go as a team. Medical calls, we're splitting in half, and two's going on the medical and two staying back. And then we're doing all of our decon. We get back from calls, our daily temperature checks. And we're just doing everything we can to ensure that if there is an exposure, we limit it. We've set up basically decon kits for on scene, so if we go to a patient and we have a lot of the red flags that are there, once the patient's transported, we have the ability to decon on scene, our PPE, our personnel, even down to clothing, and get them back to the station. So we're doing everything on that level that we can do. It's kind of tough on a fire side to say we're only going to run with 2 versus 4, because when a fire comes in, and that's, one thing that we talked about on a conference call the other day, our number one mission is fire. The fire department's number one mission is fire suppression. Medical calls is a response that we provide to the community, and we'll continue to do that, but we can't jeopardize the fire protection of the island in order to continue to supplement EMS calls. So we have no at this point, EMS and County 911 is working with us daily. We're reducing the number of calls we're going on. We're only going on top priority calls, what we call echo type calls that require us to actually do life-saving intervention. And at this point, that's our strategic goal. We did put out a plan to the county, what is a 10% population of the fire department that is affected, a 20%, 30 up to 50, and how would we continue to staff and do our core mission? And we put a plan together to how we can have staff go out and quarantine, or whatever the case may be, and still be able to provide that minimal staffing. And that plan goes all the way down into even admin staff riding the engine on shift work. So,
Thank you.
yes, sir.
Yeah.
Stuff work.
Thanks.
I just
Any more
asked-
questions?
I was just going to ask just for both of the chiefs. I don't know the words, but just pass our gratitude to your guys. We appreciate what they're doing.
Thank you.
And gals. Gotta have it.
Bruce, I did have one other for you, which is as we start to hear about the stimulus dollars that are available for small businesses and for individuals, can we as a town be proactive and see what we can do to get some supplemental funds for the town? We're going to lose revenue, and that's going to leave us in a tough spot when it comes time to the budget, and the alternatives aren't positive when everyone's going through some tough economics. So can we find out about the grants?
Yes.
And let's just remind people as many times as we can to fill out the census. That's important to our community to make sure we're getting a good head count so that we can qualify for the different levels that we can. And I know that's been important to a number of people in the community working on getting that census.
Okay, yeah, we'll be on top of it, watching like a hawk to make sure we get some of it and help the local businesses. All right, thanks.
Ed, are you presenting the next item? So the next item, we're going to talk about municipal fees in the marina.
Mayor, Council, I have a few updates, and we'll talk about the marina as well. So you will see our Public Works and Public Utilities folks are still out maintaining the utilities for the community. We do have projects on Columbia, Charlotte, and Pinfish that our folks are out trying to improve and enhance our system. So those folks are out there. Those are emergency repairs, so they have to be done, are projects that are scheduled and need to be done to ensure that those properties don't flood or have safe infrastructure around them. So we are trying to limit what we're doing out in the community, but if there's a project that's life safety, we are continuing to move forward. So you will see some of those going on if you get those type of questions. That's why those are continuing to occur. We've also gone back and looked at our rates and fees and talked to the community about what areas are different folks struggling, and one that we identified was we were able in-house to make some adjustments to help folks out, but one area where we would need your help is the town marina, and that's the ordinance you have in front of you. It basically would modify our rates and fee schedule and give them relief for the month of April, and we would, if you would, up to council, if you'd waive that cost for the month of April, that would be their monthly rent.
Ed, how does that billing cycle work for them, just at the high level? In other words, is that like due now? When is that due? I don't know how they pay their bills, so I just wasn't sure.
So we're actually transitioning right now. Historically, they've done quarterly bills, and right now we're switching over to online software program, and they'll be paying monthly. So about half of them have switched over, and I think most of you know Larry, who's helping us out with the marina. I talked to him today. He'll be scheduling the other half in next week and the following week to switch over. And so our goal is by May, when we start back with billing, we'll have everybody on a monthly billing schedule.
So if they don't pay their bill, so let's just assume for simplicity everybody's on a monthly and they don't pay their bill, what happens? Are they at any risk or anything? I'm trying to figure out whether we need to act on that. I'm certainly supportive. I'm just trying to figure out if we need to act now or if we shouldn't look more holistically. So, in other words, if they don't pay their April rent until we get a chance to see the full picture, does anything happen to them? Is there any consequence? That's my question.
It would be up to, we haven't sent those bills out. Normally they would have gone out by now, But it would be up to us to implement a fine for them if they're not paying their bill.
So I think
That
what-
would be the action.
Lynn had asked earlier if we would, he said, what do you think about just addressing all these at our council meeting? And I was looking at the calendar, I thought council was next Tuesday. If it's not for 2 weeks, I think it's a stress issue as much.
I agree.
It's monetary, but it's also a stress. If a guy doesn't have his bill, I mean, I think the town, we need to do what we can to be proactive to help these small businesses where we can. And so I'm okay waiving their, personally, I'm okay waiving their dockage fee for April. And if we need to address it again in May, we should address it again in May. And I would ask, as I did with Bruce, I see you're right up on the trash for commercial and dumpsters, but let's look at the utilities as well for businesses that have either closed or have been required to close, figuring out some kind of waiver on their, if they're not using any water, there should be no minimum bill. And I know in normal times, we have a minimum bill, even if you're not open. This is not a normal time. And anything we can do to help these small businesses, I think we need to do it.
Steve, I think I hadn't thought about it until you just said that. I think that's a good point, is that every business owner I've talked to, it's like everything is wait, you know? And I think you make a good point about the stress just piling up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
So-
looking at this, it goes from, you know, a $25 bill, a $15 bill, and you start thinking, well, it's $25, but you add that up, 25 here, 15 there, 5 there, 3 here, 27, all of a sudden, you know, these are real dollars on real, when zero income is coming in. I think we need to do as a municipality what we can, and so that's why I asked Bruce if you guys would let us look at that at council and start getting the word out to people that we'll probably try and provide some relief that we can and still be
Right.
fiscally responsible. And I would look at them personally as an April to May and do it month to month and not some blanket.
Do it as we go.
And we could look at it in the time frame that we are under the state of emergency, and for instance, that certain things are closed, and whenever they reopen. So just a question, do you need a vote separately? Do you need to vote on this?
This would be adopted by ordinance, so yes, ma'am, we would need a vote for this ordinance.
So let's look at it separately then. So I'll make a motion that we waive all fees for April for our dockage of the marina. All in favor?
Aye.
We'll look at it again. Aye to me. And I will look at it again, depending on if we have to extend past April 30th. And I don't think, are we prepared to do anything with the business with,
I think
or do we need you to come back to us?
I think that.
We can bring
Jay
some
brought up
options.
A good point was, you know, we need to probably look at exactly how much revenue we're talking about foregoing, but I think the intent from council would be to look at some relief. Bruce, let's get them a week or two to come up with some plans, but I think we should start sharing with some. We received an email from a business owner. She said, look, I've closed my business. You're giving me a minimum bill. We ought to let people know we're gonna work on some relief. Let's ease the stress wherever we possibly can.
So I think, Steve, we're going to have to look at it from a little bit different angle, because some of the businesses are still open technically, and some are closed. So would it be someone who submitted for that waiver?
Well,
Would they have to submit and say, I closed on this? Because everybody closed different
I
dates.
think
We
there's a
can see the
variety of
difference
ways.
between
There's-
open versus not open.
Right.
There's also, I mean, we've talked about, for
Usage.
example, there's a
Right.
minimum bill. No usage, nothing, a minimum bill.
There is.
So there should be no minimum bill in this particular time. However, Lynn brought up a good point. Well, what if they close voluntarily and they're technically closed, but they're out using some water, washing their windows or power washing? So maybe it's,
Good point.
some people are gonna get billed for usage and other people get zero minimum.
Let's do what we can.
You know, look, we have 100 of these cases. It's not like there's thousands of them. I understand it's a staff burden, but I mean, these businesses are being burdened. Our residents are being burdened. You know, every day someone calls me and says they got laid off. They don't have a job, you know. So we need to be doing what we can. To answer Fred's question, I can't do a lot about some of those things, Fred, but locally we can do what we can to help where we can help and still be fiscally responsible.
So you're suggesting just whatever the usage is?
Unless it's at zero. So
No,
I
you're
don't know
right,
what
because
that
a lot of the
would be.
businesses are doing work on the property.
Staff needs to give us some direction. I think
Right.
staff needs
Yeah,
to-
let's just sit back
We
on
can
some
bring you-
numbers and go from there.
Yes, sir, we can bring you back some options.
Yeah, I would like to see the whole, I agree
Yeah,
with what
right.
Steve's saying, not just, I want to be flexible, and I think we have to do some case-by-case stuff, but we also have to understand what kind of money holistically
Yes,
we're
sir.
talking about, because
That's what we can bring.
it might
Okay.
be more than we can
And-
do. Not that we don't want to do it, but it just, we have to look at the whole picture.
A possible idea is also that businesses that have closed, when they do come back on board, when that first month, it's probably not going to be boom, business right back on. So look at possibly a different tier for that first month, that second, so it looks like everything's back into motion, that we're back to where we were.
We do kind of figure our own stimulus. We got to figure out something, what we can do municipally, which is why I asked you, Bruce, what we can do, what staff can do to get us some federal or state emergency relief dollars, because, you know, we should try and help our businesses and our residents with these problems where we can. But to Lynn's point, we're going to have a budget, and if we're another 100,000 short or 400,000 short, the municipality, the business is going to go on, whether it's 3 months from now or 6 months or 9 months.
Or we be.
Go ahead.
Just on our attorney, go back to just make sure what we do is applicable to everyone, we need to make sure we have a plan, so we're treat everyone equitably.
Glad to know Noel Fox is listening.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday,
Happy
Noel Fox.
birthday. Sing to her.
Well, great. If you could come back to us, and so if any of you guys get asked out in the public, let's let them know that we are working on something for our businesses that are closed.
And one of my other items I was going to bring up, it is Noel Fox's birthday. And we wanted to make
I'm
sure
down
we
to sing.
recognize Noel.
Anybody else want to sing?
And we can do that if you want to. But also, I'm back here on you probably see me back here on my computer. I'm also on Zoom with department heads, so they can watch on our live stream, but we are testing out that as a platform. It's something that the county is using Zoom for their meetings, and a lot of other municipalities and counties are utilizing. So we are looking at that. We had a Zoom staff meeting this past Wednesday that went fairly smoothly, and there's some other platforms out there we're looking at as well, but that's something that
So
we
do you
don't
want to
know.
tell the public what that is? I know a lot of people do, but there may be a lot of people that don't.
Yes, ma'am. So it's a virtual meeting software that has really caught on in this time when we have to keep social distancing in our lives, and it will allow, for instance, the counties having meetings where all the county commissioners are actually at home or office, and they are virtually logging in, and you can see them in their background. Like if you walk back and look at my screen now, unless they've logged off since I walked up here, you would see a lot of department heads are looking at my back and looking at you right now. So they're all on the screen. So our thought is we could have those displayed, and you would see department heads, you would see council members, and that's what the public
And
would.
it's interactive.
It would be interactive where you
Like high and sky.
Okay, there you go.
You
Y'all
would ha-
behave.
you would have a host. Your host would be the mayor, and the mayor would be able to control the meeting, could mute everyone and allow certain people to speak at whatever time.
Yeah, I think it's.
You gotta
good
love that,
You
Leanne.
guys are doing that only because we make, I mean, you got to plan for the worst case, right? We hope this never happens, but if we get to the worst case, we may not all want to be in this room. So we need you guys to kind of figure that.
It's really.
that-
Yeah.
It's really allowed for a lot of innovation where we're having meetings with folks in Raleigh from FEMA that we're looking at getting reimbursements for COVID-19. We can have those virtual meetings, and it's helping with our communication. So it's really pushing us to be more innovative. So we're excited about the opportunities.
Great. Great.
Thank
Just
you.
ask your sons and daughters, they can hook you up on it.
I didn't know what it was until last week, so.
I was in the county.
Cool kids use it.
Cool kids and kids.
And so while we're waiting for Bruce to come up, just for the public, each week we have been meeting, some in person and recently more on conference call with county commissioners. We have the mayors of each beach town and the mayor of Wilmington. We've all called in on conference calls with our county commissioner, Julia Bozeman, so that's worked real well, and we've had the managers there and the county manager, so that's been real good for us to all be on the same page and talk every week about our updates. So just so you know, we are doing that.
That is right, and it's actually something I'm going to discuss. We had a meeting yesterday, and we were discussing the beaches, and And as you know, we are following the county's state of emergency orders, and at our request, the county attorney confirmed that the order was intended to close the beach strand, which means that they feel that there is the authority there, that they have the authority to close it, and of course, that would turn over us to enforce it, but, so if that's, just want to bring that.
So you got that while we were sitting in
That
this
happened
meeting?
just
Okay.
here, yes. Noel emailed me so. But that's something.
So for the public, after what Bruce just said, every other beach town has been enforcing no one on the beach, correct? Whether you have a public or a private beach access.
That's our understanding, that everyone else is enforcing it.
And they would like us to follow suit.
Yeah, I think it's up to us to enforce it, but that was their intent. Okay, so,
Gentlemen?
but we,
I think it's pretty self-explanatory.
Sorry?
I think it's pretty self-explanatory what he just said. I mean,
Well, and I have in front of me somewhere, under all this paperwork, a proclamation that I'm agreeing to the county's heightened restrictions that I have to sign today. So if the county is asking us to enforce that, I think we have to all be on the same team and all do the same thing and give our police chief his direction.
Yeah, I don't think you can consent to part of it. You either consent to their order or we.
Right. And we've asked for clarity on that since yesterday, just for you guys. We've asked for direction on what that means. So I know Noel Fox is at our birthday party, but so do you need a vote on that, or do I just sign the proclamation? Okay. All right, so we will follow the county. I'll sign the proclamation. Chief, you're in charge. So so we had some discussions that, people were possibly leaving Carolina Beach to come to, or Curry Beach to come to Carolina Beach, so it will be the same through the whole island. Did anybody have any comments? Questions? Because you got something, Lynn?
I was just
Go
gonna
ahead.
say, Bruce, Jay and I are relatively new here, and I'll just say that the town staff has been very impressive. Every time I call, every question, no, I hope that's just a dry throat, but
Oh, no.
but anyway, Bruce, to your team, my hat's off to you guys. I'm sure this wasn't what you signed up for when you came to Carolina Beach, but you'd be dealing with it somewhere. So we appreciate you dealing with it here. That's all I had. Thank you, Mayor.
And you guys are doing a phenomenal job. And so our next council meeting is not until April 14th, which is 2 weeks. So I have asked our town clerk to set up some way that the public can call in during public comment. Maybe they can sign up in advance, and they can, I know some other municipalities have a call-in number if you want to speak your 3 minutes. So we want to make sure that the public has the ability to do that. If you guys have 2 weeks to figure that out and set it up, that would be great. I don't know how you want to do that, whether it be a Zoom or a call-in number or whatever. And we just tell, just a couple words for the public. I know these are restrictions that you don't like, and I know that they're very difficult. And I want to walk the beach too, but this is not forever. This is for a short time. If we all follow the rules now, we can get through this a lot quicker. Our number one concern, again, is public health and safety, and we have to go with our CDC and our health department and the people who understand these situations more than we do, and we're looking for their advice. So that's why we're doing this, is for your safety. We ask that you be calm and that you take care of your neighbors. We ask you to do more. We ask you to follow the rules and just help everybody out and help us get through this time. So hopefully it'll be a tough couple weeks, but maybe we can maybe come out of this in May. Hopefully. I can't tell you that we will, but we hope to. So practice social distance, be kind, be tolerant of other people, and if anybody else has anything to say, if not, we'll adjourn this meeting.
Adjourn or recess it?
We will adjourn, and if we need to call another meeting, we still can. All right? Meeting adjourned.